Hey guys, JD here, and today we're going to be servicing the steering pivot and steering cable on this 2021 Kawasaki Ultra LX. Stay tuned. This is the 160 horsepower naturally aspirated Kawasaki Ultra, and when your steering starts to sound like this, that means it's time to service your steering cable and your steering pivot bushing. How you doing, Coop? All right, so our first step is to remove this cladding on the handlebars. So once you get all of those screws off, we're gonna go ahead and pop this rubber shroud. All right, there we go, and then put that aside. Here's the styrofoam. This has a temp sensor and your buzzer. All right, so now we're just gonna finish getting this disconnected. To get the steering riser off, to get to the steering pivot, we have to take the handlebars off. That's gonna be 4 12mm bolts. We're gonna go through and remove both control pods. That's just so we can get these wires and everything to get this sheathing off here. So those are just gonna be Phillips. You're also gonna wanna pull this support bracket here. It's just in the way. All right, you then have to pull out all these little annoying plastic push rivets. So here is our factory adjustable steering riser. You can see the base is aluminum and then the pivoting part here is plastic. Some people, these will be loose. You can see this one has a little bit of play, but we've tightened up this castle nut so that the steering is a little bit firmer than normal. But now what we're going to do is we're going to pull these 4 12mm bolts to get the riser off of the steering pivot assembly. All right, a lot of corrosion. So there is our steering pivot. Look at all this corrosion. This all needs to be cleaned up, and you can see my kids were sitting here. So now we're going to take this whole upper assembly and we're going to remove it from the ski. That's going to give us more access to the steering pivot bushing. So you're going to go through, you have a couple 10mm acorn nuts, a couple 10mm nuts, and then you have these ones right here that also have a 10mm nut on the inside. You're going to have to hold with a wrench. So now to get this side off, we have a couple more nuts and bolts, and then we've got to remove this fuel fill kind of trim here. So you're just going to go like you saw. You just get your fingers underneath and pop those little push rivets out. It's fairly easy. Just don't pull it by the plastic. You don't want to rip. It's like a rubber. So there you go. And now I just took this chain off so I could get it through. And I'm just going to put the cap back on so I don't have to breathe fuel vapor while I'm working on this. All right, so now for this middle console here, you're going to reach in and disconnect the quick connect on the cable for the reverse lever. So then you could go ahead and just leaving the display and leaving the immobilizer connected, you could just set this right here out of the way. But first what we're going to do is we're going to unbend this cotter pin here and we're going to remove this castle nut. And you can see this really is in need of service. All right, so first we're going to unbend this cotter pin. There's the pin. All right, so this is pretty seized on here, so I'm going to spray some penetrating lubricant on it and we're going to let it soak for a little bit. Again, you want to be careful with this. It is just aluminum. We don't want to break it. Oh. Check that out. Look at this. Salt. Hey, and also look at this. That's so loose I could unscrew it with my hand. Alright, so I've got this a little bit cleaned up now. And you know, you can see I've got some reference marks on here. It's a good idea to mark where everything lines up. I am going to show you how to recalibrate the steering once we're done with this, so you don't have to worry about that too much, as long as you don't like install the pivot bushing here backwards once you remove it. So the ball portion is basically pointing towards the back, the stern of the ski. So the next thing we're going to do here is go ahead and remove this assembly here. You can see that I literally haven't even touched these. These are so loose, I can get them out by hand. They're held in by that top plate anyway, so not like the end of the world. Look how nasty that is. That's all salt. That is all salt. And now this ring here, we're just gonna loosen. Oh boy. Yeah. That oh, that's pretty nasty. Now this is a little bit seized in there, so I'm just gonna put this nut on like that and gently there you go. And then you might have to move some of the ducts out of the way. And there's your steering arm, and wow, that looks pretty bad. Okay, so let's shift our focus to the steering cable assembly here. Now you can see I've got this all lubricated and greased already. I also have my shift cable here. Just got a lot of grease on the components here. That will wash off, but you know, you want to do that regularly to prevent the parts from seizing. So you could just grab this and pull that boot up. So you can see how the cable is open there. And you want to take your grease. I like to go like that. And then when you push this boot down, that grease will get captured, you know, go slowly. And I like to kind of twist it around. And then we can wipe up any excess and just... Now this bracket, while it is carbon steel, it has not gotten any salt water on it, so it looks good. Just to prevent it from rusting, I am going to go ahead and just spray it down with some corrosion block just to coat the whole thing here. All right, so we've got our cables all re-greased. So now it's time, and I've got it done here, but I'll show you again. It's time to take some grease and get this bushing assembly ready to go. Now we're not going to reattach this bracket yet. You need this to be loose because actually we're going to attach this pivot to this ball joint before we reinstall it. That makes it easier. It's almost impossible to get your hand up under there. In this case, I'm not pulling the plate because this has a seal, and this is just a pivot bushing service. You don't have to take the extra steps to remove all this and add time to your job. For this job, we're just going to lubricate this bushing, clean up any rusted parts, and make sure nothing's damaged, and then we're going to reassemble everything. All right, so here is the steering shaft, and you can see it's all covered in rust. So we got to get this cleaned up. I can't put this back in like this. So let me show you how I'm going to do that now. All right, so here is our pivot bushing shaft, and you can remember that the top part here was all rusty, and it looks quite a lot better now. So I left this part because I want to show you my trick for cleaning surface rust off of this. Now, you don't want to bead blast it. You don't want to sand it. Maybe like a 3000, you know, a really high grit sandpaper, but this is a polished surface. I don't want to roughen this up. I just want to get this surface rust. This is stainless steel, so this surface rust should come off. So this is a two-step process. It's really easy. What you're going to need is some tin foil and some WD-40. So here's my piece of tin foil. Okay, you're going to fold it up a few times so it looks like that, okay? And then here I've got some WD-40. So we're just going to go ahead and get that on there. And then what I'm going to do is take this tin foil and I'm using a lot of pressure. All right, and you can see, I'll just do this one section and I'll show you. Then you can use a paper towel to wipe it off. Now it's not going to come out perfect because the metal is, you know, scored to some degree, but this will clean up a lot of the surface rust. The tinfoil trick also is really good for the threads because the tinfoil is malleable, so you could kind of get the rust out of the threads with it that way. You can see it already looks a heck of a lot better. So while it's not perfect, it definitely looks a lot better, and I'll continue to work on these and polish them up. All right, so I've got this as cleaned up as I'm going to get it right now. You can see it's not perfect, but I did get a lot of that surface rust off, and it's cleaned up and ready to go back in service. So what we're going to do now is take our grease. First thing, just get some on that ball right there. Second, this whole area where all that rust was, we want to make sure that this part is heavily greased. In fact, just go like this. They don't put enough from the factory. So this part here is contacting the plastic on the back side of this bushing. There's the exact same bushing on the opposite side. So you want to make sure that all these little nooks and crannies in here are packed full of grease, because otherwise, if there's not grease, then that's an opportunity for rust to form. Now, the next thing you want to do before we put this in, you want to just reconnect the shaft here. If you try to connect this after you put it in, it'll be kind of difficult. Pull down the quick connect and pop it up just like that. Make sure it's popped up all the way. We'll check that one. Then we're just going to take some more grease and we're going to coat the entire surface there. You don't want it falling off, obviously, but you want it to be... All right, so it's going to look like this. Keep in mind that our steering cable bracket is not attached, right? It's just sitting in here. Okay. All right, and there we go. The grease on that too. All right. Okay. We're going to put some grease right there on the fiberglass because that's going to be under this plate. Okay, so we just want some grease sandwich there. All right. All right, so now the steering cable bracket is tightened. We've got this in place here. Here's our stainless steel retainer plate. And you can see where those two Allens go. All right. And then these two Allens, we're just going to tighten just like that. Okay, so now we've got our retainer nut in place. We've got the pivot bushing greased. We've got these two Allens back in. So now it's time to add the steering riser plate. All right, so we're going to make sure that this is packed full of grease. That's going to go right like that. All right, here's the castle nut. And again, you don't want to over tighten this, but you want to get it enough so that there's not a lot of play, because people tend to complain about the slop in these. So if you tighten this just right, you won't have any slop. Here's our cotter pin. All right, so now the pivot bushing service is complete. And we're going to go ahead and get everything back together. Then what I'm going to do is go back to the jet pump. And this step, it's easiest once you get the handlebars back on. We're going to go back and make sure that our steering cable is properly adjusted and that the handlebars are perfectly straight when the ski will be going straight. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button and subscribe for more exclusive jet ski content, only on JD's Waterworld.